Ladies and gentlemen, what a great pleasure it is to be here in Rome again with my very good friends from ANITEC. You will perhaps remember that Digital Europe is the organisation that pulls together all of the ANITECs of Europe from all of the countries of Europe. None of them are quite as good as ANITEC, I have to say, in the other countries, but so our members are the associations from all the European countries, and our job is to coordinate the engagement of the industry with the European policymakers. The main point I want to make in my few minutes talking to you is a point about integration. And I think we've heard it already from many of the speakers. It's about the integration of digital skills into many other parts of the policy world. It's what we're seeing more and more, and I think it is increasingly important that digital and digital skills are seen in that context. Now, we have already heard from Signora Gozzi about the digital single market, and I wanted to try and put maybe the digital skills issue in the context of the digital single market as I see it and as I have seen it develop over the last few weeks. I've spoken, in fact, I was counting it up, on 5 or 6 panels with Vice President Ansip over the last few weeks about the digital single market, and I've seen the ideas develop. And the thing I think I have seen most development of is the integration of these ideas in many other areas of European policy. That I think was a deliberate intention of this Commission also. As you know, President Juncker formed a Commission with 6 or 7, depending on how you count it, 6 or 7 vice presidents. And he said to each of the vice presidents very clearly in a mission letter, this is your job. And part of your job is to bring together all of the commissioners in the areas that might have an impact on what you're trying to achieve. And in the area of digital, there are 12 or 13 other commissioners involved. So actually to produce a communication on May the 6th with 12 or 13 commissioners involved was quite impressive, just the fact of actually producing it on time. I think it has got more balanced, and I'll tell you what I mean by that in a moment. I think it has got more balanced, and I think what we've seen as a communication on May the 6th is actually quite a balanced communication. I'm struck. I think I can see the strong hand of Commissioner Oettinger, the German commissioner, in this, as you would expect, the digital economy and society. But not just that. When I was looking back at why did Germany win the World Cup, the analysts all said, well, you know, lots of other teams had great players. I mean, England obviously didn't have great players and was never going to be in the game, but lots of other teams, and you might be able to think of one, had great players. But the thing that stood out about Germany, I was told in the early days, was they played as a team. They had an integrated, completely team approach to the game, and it really did seem to pay off. But the other thing, interestingly, that I was told about both Germany's performance in the World Cup and indeed England's performance in the Six Nations rugby was the digital skills they were forced to develop. Big data analytics was a big part of particularly the England performance, but my German friends tell me also the German team performance. So just the England rugby, every rugby player in the England team was given a laptop. They were taught how to use the data analytics software, and it was really drilled into them that they get to use the big data analytics to understand how to improve their performance. So digital skills is now reaching, you know, all the parts of life. It really is becoming integrated in everything that we do. You've heard about the digital single market having a package, having 3 pillars. And I think that's exactly the way to think of it. It's the way I find it easiest to think about it. I think it's worth just stepping back, though, and saying, well, what is the digital single market? And the way I prefer to think about it is it's the single market in the digital age. And the first part, the first pillar, does deal with consumers taking advantage of the single market, which is the European jewel, really. I mean, it's the main thing that Europe can bring to drive economic benefit to its people, in my opinion. Of course, that is a somewhat British view. But the single market is such an important jewel, and to have a single market that doesn't quite work well enough in the digital age is a terrible waste. So I think the first part of the first pillar is very much focused on trying to make sure that the single market functions well in the digital age. And that does mean dealing with things like a consistency of consumer rights, consistency of consumer protection laws, an e-commerce framework that will work across Europe, sorting out some of those irritations like parcel delivery and, to some extent, geo-blocking. So I think, you know, I can see why it is important that Europe deals with that set of issues to try and make the single market function in the digital and online world. So I think that's really important. But then as soon as you start to think about this digital single market, you immediately see that the digital infrastructure of Europe needs a massive upgrade. Not only does it need a massive upgrade for what we're doing today, but when we think about the world of connected cars and the things we've just been hearing about in the Expo and the ambitions that we all have, we know that we're going to need a much faster and stronger and more secure infrastructure with greater reach into rural areas as well. So investment in the infrastructure and getting the regulatory framework right to attract that investment is going to be absolutely critical. So you can see why there is a strong focus in this package on the infrastructure. But the third area is the area that I felt was a little bit missing in the early discussions about the digital single market, but I think has now been strengthened. And this I think of as the digital transformation of industry and our public services, which was mentioned earlier by other speakers. Why is this important? Well, one of the people I came across when I was reading some of the background to the work I did was a bank robber, an American bank robber. No, I'm not thinking about Google here, by the way. An American bank robber called Willie Sutton. Exactly, I thought. Willie Sutton was asked, well, why do you rob banks, Willie? And he said, well, that's where the money is. And I think that's why I'm very keen that we focus on digital transformation, because that's where the money is. All the research shows, and I know you can find research to support any prejudice you have, but the research shows, and it is reliable, I think, that 75% of the value of digital to Europe is in the transformation of its existing enterprises and the improvement of the efficiency of its public services. And when you think about that, it makes sense. One of the companies that we came across in our work on digital transformation was an Italian furniture maker called Berto Salotti. Filippo Berto was the CEO, and it's a long-established, high-quality Italian furniture maker who underwent a digital transformation when Filippo took over the reins. The young CEO took over the company, and he transformed it digitally. You were able to do, for example, virtual factory visits. So he maintained the quality of the offering, but used digital tools to really transform the productivity and competitiveness of the company, and found himself selling not only to the northern Italian market, but to the Irish market, to the US market. And suddenly, the horizons for this company opened up, and they improved their competitiveness and their productivity. And they were able to employ more people. And if you can just extrapolate that model across SMEs across Europe, make them more productive, competitive, grow more quickly, create more jobs, then you make a real impact on the employment challenge that we have in Europe. Another good example of that was just to show that digital skills are not only for the 30-year-olds. There was a woman I met who runs a business called Look Fabulous Forever. Now, gentlemen in the audience, you should make a note of this and go back and impress your other halves on this. Look Fabulous Forever. And now it might be your grandmothers that you want to impress, because Trisha Cusden, who set this company up, was 65 years old when she set this company up. And she couldn't find cosmetics that she thought suited the skin of a woman of 65. So she talked to cosmetics manufacturers, established some cosmetics, and then was going to set up a shop in her local village in the UK. But her daughter said, why not make this an online business? And today she sells all over the world. She must be the keenest 68-year-old, as she is now, the keenest 68-year-old follower of Google Analytics. You know, she watches who's coming to her store every day, where she's selling these cosmetics. It's a really good case study of how someone who's setting up a business later in life can use digital to build a business that is much bigger and is much more exciting than she would have done without that digital capability. So let me close and bring it back to the issue of digital skills, because if we're going to put this pressure, as it were, or create this opportunity for our small businesses in Europe, the Berto Salottis, the Patricia Cusden, if we're going to say to them, well, you could do much better if you were a digital business, they're immediately going to say, well, where do I get that digital skill from? Where do I get that digital competence? So we're going to put even more pressure on the demand side for particularly digital leadership, but also the digital skills that go behind that as well in cybersecurity, or go back to the England rugby team, data analytics. Who's going to teach the players about big data analytics? So we really have got to see this in this, the fact that we will be putting pressure on our supply of skills. And that's why things like eSkills for Jobs 2015, 2016, and why the national coalitions that integrate all the effort across the different ministries, across the private sector, the associations, the education sector, that's really why they are so important. And just one last point on integration, just to show how digital is beginning to be integrated in lots of things. Another communication that came out from the European Commission last week, I'm sure you follow them all, everyone, I know, but just in case you missed this one, there was one on better regulation. Now, it is worth a read. It's a good communication by the first Vice President Timmermans. And in it, towards the end of it, you'll see something that we've been arguing for, which is a mechanism to allow a panel of specialists who are examining regulation to see whether it's fit for purpose. There's a mechanism that allows them to examine the regulation to see, is it fit for the digital world? Does it hold back innovation? Now, these are things that we've been arguing should be built into the regulatory development process in Europe for a long time. And to see this now built into the very idea of improving the quality of regulation by having a specific, we called it the digital test, by having that built in is another good example, I think, of digital and digital skills and capability being integrated completely into the fabric of our policy-making efforts and generally our efforts to improve our economy and society. So it's a great pleasure to be here supporting this effort of yours today, and I wish you every continued success with it. Thank you, Francesco.